Hi, my name's Danny Strong. I'm the writer to the new book to chess, and this is Broadway World's Notes on a Script. I don't have necessarily a first encounter to chess. There just seems to never have been a moment where I didn't know chess. And I think this comes from being a huge musical theater, high school musical theater nerd, right? Where all we did was listen to soundtracks of different shows, and chess was just one of the shows that was in the catalog of shows we were all obsessed with in high school. So about 10 years ago, and it's crazy that it was 10 years ago, I was listening to a Spotify musical theater playlist, and chess just kept popping up among other iconic musicals. You know, it'd be Hamilton and Les Mis and Jesus Christ Superstar, so basically the best playlist in the history of playlists. And every time chess would come up, I'd get this little dopamine kick of just excitement that a new chess song came on. It's just like chess. Chess is so cool. I love chess. And then I started thinking, so what's the deal with chess? You know, I know it famously doesn't work, that it's rarely performed, that it's usually just done in concert. There's chess in concert because from my understanding of it, which was very little, it was hard to follow the show, that it didn't really make sense. So I thought to myself, why don't I check it out? Why don't I see what the problem with chess is? And this was purely as the musical theater nerd that I am. So I went online, I found Chess in Concert with Josh Groban and Idina Menzel at Royal Albert Hall, which seemed like I hit the gold mine of trying to find a version of chess to watch. And so I watched it. And as I was watching it, as a writer, sometimes I do rewrite jobs, and my sort of rewrite side of my writer brain kind of started to click in. And I started to come up with ideas of, if I were to rewrite this show, what I would do. And that led to more ideas, and then about 2 weeks later, I was with a friend of mine, and after maybe a whiskey or two, and I'm not proud of it, but hey, that's what happened, and we're on the record here, so I'm just going to tell you guys what really happened. We started to talk about chess, as musical theater nerds often do, and then I started saying, oh, I watched a video of it a few weeks ago, and I think I could maybe fix it. And my drinking companion thought I was crazy. And then I said something truly crazy. I said, why don't you text Michael Mayer right now and tell him I want to fix chess and I want him to direct it, because I knew she knew Michael Mayer. She said, really? And I said, yes. That was purely the whiskey speaking. She texts him. I forget about it. And then I wake up the next morning with an email from Michael Mayer, and all he said was, I'm in. So that was the beginning of the journey of trying to bring chess back to Broadway. I go and I meet with Tim Rice. Tim Rice agrees to let me write a treatment, because I kind of talked him into it, to be honest with you. I said, just let me write a treatment. I'll write a treatment, I'll show it to you, and if you don't like it, we don't have to move forward. So where do I begin? I mean, there's so many different versions of chess over the years. There's the concept album, there's the original London production, then there's the Broadway production, which had an entirely new book, then there's tours of it. There's just so many different sort of attempts at chess over the years, including the Royal Albert Hall version I saw in 2008 on YouTube, which was a sort of its own version that they had made changes to, right? So where do you begin? Now, the Broadway version, which had an original book, I, to this day, have never read it. So I have no idea what's in the Broadway version. It was sort of a famous Broadway, I don't want to be too unkind, but bomb, perhaps. There's its poster at Joe Allen. It only ran 16 performances after it opened. And I know that the original authors are not fond of it, so I didn't necessarily see a need to even look at it, which I still haven't, right? So I thought the whole point of redoing this is it's not about me, it's not about whatever I'm gonna do, it's about these songs. These songs are incredible, they're iconic, they've lasted 40 years. People love the show, people love the music now, just as much as ever. I know this as a fan. So it was really about, okay, how can I create a book that can take us through these songs so that the songs could be fully realized, not just as standalone bangers, which a lot of them are, but as a rich piece of storytelling, right? Because it's not that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 good songs in the show. There's like 20. It's rich with just fantastic music, and there's story within these songs. You know, there's the love story of love triangle of Florence, Freddie, and Anatoly. There's the story of the chess competitions between Freddie and Anatoly. There's Anatoly and his battle against Vigand in Act 2, right? So there's story in these lyrics, right? And so those lyrics were definitely my guide. And I had this other idea, which was they wrote the show in 1983, 84. I mean, that's when the concept album came out. The Cold War was still happening. Well, it's 40 years later. I can look at the Cold War from a bird's eye point of view, and I could infuse stories, true life stories from the Cold War into the show that could turn the whole piece into somewhat of a Cold War history play. So you could have the events of the Cold War, which I thought could be, just quite interesting and dramatically engaging. And then the other goal of doing that was it would also raise the stakes for the characters, because it wouldn't just be the love story and the chess competitions that are, obstacles or wants or desires for these characters, but the fact that there is one of the most dangerous wars going on in the history of human civilization, because at any time the entire world can be destroyed within an hour. Well, those are pretty high stakes, right? That's what was at stake in the Cold War, and that's why it was technically a, quote, Cold War, because it was so dangerous for the two nations that they didn't want to actually go to war with each other. They wanted to use all sorts of subterfuge, propaganda, spying, to undermine the other country. So these were all the things that I was thinking about in trying to put it together, which, if it sounds complicated and difficult, it was. This was very, very difficult for me to do. I think one of the most complicated things I've ever undertaken as a writer was trying to create scenes to take us into a set of songs that already exist, with lyrics that already exist, that have story within the lyrics, right? In some ways, it's like doing a jukebox musical, except in a jukebox musical, you can sort of pick different songs that you want, toss out certain songs, add certain songs. The lyrics usually don't have story in them. They're just, famous songs that people love. Well, this had the extra challenge of, no, there's story in those lyrics and in those songs, and I can't betray that story. So all of it made for quite a challenging undertaking.